Do you think trust comes with transparency?
Yes, definitely. Transparency, education. I mean, our elections in Wisconsin are very complicated. And so being able to talk about every aspect of the process and letting our communities know how it works is very important.
Paulina, when you look at that, you see polling perception from voters, what they think of what happens in Milwaukee. How have you worked to try to say there is transparency? There isn't anything we're trying to hide here.
Yeah. So we've done a big push prior to November to take every media call we can to talk about how central count works. I think that's probably the most mysterious. And we are the largest city in the state of Wisconsin. No one really comes close to our size. So we have a very unique opportunity with all eyes watching us to educate the public where we can. We've done tours, we've done open houses, and we intend to do more. We're always putting on our website, what can we add? I'm really excited about this year. We're going to do a qualitative study to see what else the public needs on our website. That tends to be our #1 place where the voters come to look at what's going on in our office. But also just spending that time about central count. Observers have every right to come to our central count office. They come to polling locations. Anybody can come, and I'm always encouraging people, come and see it for yourself.
So you talk about the mystery of central count. You are the biggest city. You have the most absentee ballots. What was interesting in the polling is that there seemed to be this widespread support among all the parties, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, to say, you know what, if there is a way to start processing early absentee ballots, maybe a day before, is that a good thing from where you sit overseeing Milwaukee elections?
Yes, definitely. This last election, we counted over 108,000 ballots. I mean, that took us until about 3:30 in the morning. And I think what the public sees is when you're watching the news and you're watching those election results come in, once the polls close, as each polling site is sending their numbers to the county, you see that number slowly rise, right? And then all of a sudden it'll stop at about 60%, 60 to 70%. And you're like, where's that other 30? That's all at central count. And because those results are hand delivered, you won't see that other 30 to 40% until the end of the night, and it all comes into one swoop. And so having the public understand how that process works is so important. But the thing about Monday count is that other states in the country do it. So it's not like we have best practices out there. And so it is a lot more work. We would hire more staff. It would increase our security needs, but other states do it. We can follow some best practices.
So where do you draw the line when they use terms like processing, tabulating, pre-ballot preparation? What does that mean? What does that look like?
So for central count, as soon as ballots are mailed out to voters, that day we start accepting ballots into our location. Well, 108,000 ballots to track is a lot of work. So from the beginning, when ballots start coming in, we're scanning them in to make sure the voter knows their ballot came in. We're sorting and alphabetizing. I mean, that's the biggest job, and getting them ready in the bins for central count. So that takes a lot of time, and that happens from the very beginning all the way up until election day. It's also occurring. And so the 108,000 ballots, well, we started off with 102,000 ballots, for example, in November. We got an additional 6,000 that day. What we're doing is just alphabetizing and getting them ready to be processed.
So what would happen on a Monday?
So on a Monday, depending on the way the details of the bill are, but we basically could start opening those ballots, preparing them for processing.
That's a labor-intense project right there, right?
Yes. I mean, we hire dozens of staff to alphabetize and hundreds of staff to begin processing.
So Ashley, when you look at this, you have central counts in your county, in Washington County. But what does the idea of getting a head start on Monday with all of the absentee ballots? I don't know how many you had in the county.
Right. So our absentee voter turnout has just continued to rise from election to election. I think November of this past year, we had almost 56% voter turnout prior to Election Day. And then even some municipalities were at 65.
And that's largely in person?
Largely in-person absentee voting. We have a strong rise in in-person absentee voting with some of the initiatives we've done in Washington County to encourage voters to in-person absentee vote with extended hours and things like that. But for us, I mean, I think it helps our clerks to be able to organize and prep things the Monday before. I have had concerns in the past about early processing of absentee votes as far as actually tabulating them, and just what that means to the public and the views surrounding that process.
Because tabulating and tallying
are
two different words.
Correct.
What would you support?
So I would support potentially the process of actually feeding the ballots through the machine if the results are not shared prior to election night, the polls close, but also the need to have security and cameras. I think the biggest question regarding early processing would come regarding the nighttime, like when nobody's there, what happens when everybody leaves, and where are those ballots and how are they kept securely? And I think that's something we definitely need to look at, whether law enforcement is involved, live streaming of cameras, observers present 24/7 if they want to be.
And are you talking on a Monday or
on
sooner?
a Monday and Monday overnight, if that were to be the process that the legislature goes with?
Yeah, I think it's all about, we have to keep the results secret until the end of the polls close, which would be the following day at 8 p.m., right? So we have to make sure that that part is secure throughout the process. The city of Milwaukee, we already have a really strong partnership with law enforcement. So once ballots are removed from our office, they are under 24-hour live secure. We have officers that stay there overnight, which we would do on the Monday before as well.
And Central Count is that sometimes you move in a presidential over
Correct.
to Baird, which
Yeah.
is a different center. Do you think starting a day earlier would build trust and allow you to move faster so there's not those 3 o'clock in the morning
Yes.
totals?
Yes, 100%. I mean, like I said, we by law right now cannot do anything until the polls open at 7 a.m. So I just want you to imagine what it's like to start on election day at 7 a.m. with 100,000 ballots and having to process those. Accuracy is the most number one priority that we have, and obviously security. And so we're going to take that time to make sure accuracy and security are prioritized. And so 100,000 ballots, counting those in a decent time is very difficult. And the more time we can do, the faster we can get results to the community.
So Ashley, when you hear about, Paulina, Milwaukee County, other clerks, is there a sense of, this is a team effort by all clerks,
Right.
And that what works in one county can work in another county,
Right.
but there has to be some uniformity. People want to see fairness in that county and your
Right.
county.
Yes, exactly. So I think consistency and uniformity is so very important. Wisconsin is set up so different in regards to elections compared to all other states across the country. And so I think, especially with social media and people being able to see what is happening in Arizona or Florida or wherever, it's different than how elections are run here in Wisconsin. And so I think in order to regain or build upon the trust and faith in our elections that our communities need to have, we need to create that level of consistency. And what is happening in one community in regards to the election processes is what needs to be consistent across the state. And I do understand that there are small rural communities. I have several very small communities, but it doesn't make a difference to our voters. They feel like an election in a small community should be run the same as it is in a larger community in Washington County.
Ballot drop boxes. It's now allowed under the new state Supreme Court. And in the polling, they found some support for this.
Right.
Especially, there has to be uniformity in a set standard of rules.
Right.
Is that a non-starter for you or in your county?
So in Washington County, we do have several municipalities that do have absentee drop boxes. And I will say our absentee drop boxes typically are built into the brick and mortar of the buildings. So they have been there for 50, 60, 70 years, some of them. So when the Supreme Court had deemed that they could not utilize those drop boxes, I don't know how I feel if they intended for it to be the building specific or ones that were on a corner of a street. But our municipalities, some have decided to reutilize those, and they implemented security measures surrounding those drop boxes, locking them, chain of custody regarding who has access. And then also Washington County created an initiative where we funded security cameras if our municipalities wanted to utilize that option.
Paulina, you use them?
Yes.
Would you like to use more of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's all depending. Like we follow the best practices of the Election Assistance Committee, also the state, and whatever other professionals that we depend on to teach us how to use drop boxes. So one of the important things is it has to be in a public, well-lit place, and our library is a really strong partner. And so that's where we like to be, and that's where we are. They're very close to the building. We have a special vendor that does secure boxes. We have cameras on every single box. So any expansion of a drop box has to be a very intentional additional secure analysis to make sure does it fit our standards of security. And so right now we're really happy with the 14 we have. We'll have 15 soon once Martin Luther King Library is done, and so we're excited about where we're at.
One final question for both of you. The polls showed that in this environment, and it can be a tough environment because we are a hyper-partisan, polarized, battleground state, but people in the poll showed a high appreciation for what election officials and election workers are doing. Was that a reassuring sign for both of you? I'll start with Paulina.
Definitely. I think one of the most rewarding parts of my job is working with the 3,000 election workers that we have. Election workers are amazing people. They have to maintain a polling location, handle diverse populations, make sure people are following the rules, and ensure a safe and smooth, secure election process. And that's a lot to take in, and they are some amazing people. And as I say, you talk to your friends and neighbors, you will find one, and you should apply.
It really is that. It's your friends and neighbors, right?
Yes,
Working the polls.
Exactly. Friends, neighbors, community members, leaders. It's absolutely fantastic to see people getting involved. And I will say in 2020, I had volunteered to work at the Dane County Recount, and in talking to a lot of the election observers at that point in time who hadn't gotten involved as being an election inspector, they had asked me, what is your one key recommendation for us election observers? And I said, be a poll worker, learn the process, get involved. That's so incredibly important. And we've seen a huge increase in Washington County.